Hey everybody. I guess first should be trigger warning. We're going to be talking about suicidal ideation, um, narcissistic abuse, some sexual content discussion. Nothing too graphic, but it's part of it. Um, so I'll start off right with that. So this one is a little different. This might not even see the light of day, honestly. I might not post this publicly, but I need to record it because I got to get in the headspace. I'm trying to work through something and I need to get it out. And unfortunately, my social circle is zero, so I really just have myself to bounce things off of right now. So that's what this is, and we'll see if I decide to post it later or not. But in this process of going through and trying to repair myself, um, I'm always, trying to look at things differently, different angles, trying to understand things better because you can't change what you don't understand. Slight warning also, before I get in too deep, this is probably going to be one of the longer ones because, again, I've got to vent until I get to my conclusion. I've come to some decisions about what my future is going to look like. But before I can focus on my future, I need to clear out the junk of my past. And it all really started with the first heart attack, And I still remember that very clearly that night, that waking up in the middle of the night, something not feeling right, but to me it was just like indigestion, like heartburn. There was no deep aching pain, there was no numbness on the side, none of that, you know. I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt nauseous and it just wasn't right. And where I, felt that way, I went to go to the bathroom. And on my way there, I didn't make it. Like I felt it. Like I knew I was going down. Like it was only for a moment, but I lost consciousness. Fortunately, I was able to aim myself because originally I would have conked my head pretty good, but I had the wherewithal. I went down for only a moment. Um, but when I came back to, it was that cold sweat, it just covered me. I knew something wasn't right. And I was really worried, but I wasn't alone in the house, but I didn't want to bother anybody because I didn't know for sure what was going on. I knew something was wrong, but I also knew at that point that I was okay. Because I was able to sit up, I could breathe, I could move. Things at that point felt fine. I was just scared from what had just happened. So I, continue on my way, went to use the bathroom, and went to lay back down. And I got up the next day. And again, all the feeling was gone. Like everything felt normal again. But I was still, concerned. And I mentioned this to my partner at the time, who I should mention is not, again, this isn't a trash talking session. This is raw. This is real. This is how it went. I know they're not going to like it if they see the story posted, but oh well, you should have done better. They are a CNA at a nursing home, so you're not talking to somebody that has no medical knowledge, all right? And I talked to my partner at the time about this experience that I had, and they had this look of concern, but they're like, oh, well, you seem okay now. Why should we waste, because that was a Saturday night and Sunday was our day to be together and do family stuff. She's like, why are we going to waste a Sunday of family time to go sit in a hospital over something that's most likely nothing? And, at the time, I felt okay. Everything, had gone back to normal. So I didn't think anything of it. And I'm like, all right, I'll agree with that. So we just hung out for the day and Didn't really do anything, but, and the next morning I'm on my way to work and I start to not feel right again. Um, Not as bad as I did the Saturday night that I went down, but it was something wasn't right. So I drove right past work and went to the hospital that I knew of that was closer to work. And, I told them what had happened the previous night. And, they took it very seriously and they did the blood work and they confirmed that I had had a heart attack, like past tense, like it was done. It's like, oh, good to know. Um, and that heart attack, that experience changed everything. And I do mean my entire life. It's like it split on a whole other timeline from that point. Um, the heart attack was scary enough. And then with it came the thoughts of, what is this damage, that it caused? And, at first my cardiologist was hopeful. And they said it would take about 3 months to recover. So I was out of work, because I did maintain full-time employment. I was a hard worker. And I missed that time. But in that time, like, there was still something wrong. I still say when they put that first stent in me, they nicked something in here going through, because for like a year and a half after that, it's gone now, but for like a year and a half, like I had steady problems that I could just feel a link between a spot in here and it would mimic what was going on here. It was like my warning sign. And I expressed that to and he did say, like, hey, no, that is not normal, so let's go in again. And they did, and they put another stent to kind of strengthen the first one. Like I said, I still had that issue here, but it did get a little better. Um, you know, um, so what originally was supposed to take 3 months ended up taking closer to 6. And by that point, I didn't have my job anymore. And I get that, because even if I had, you know, if it hadn't taken me that long to recover, like I hadn't left them high and dry that long, I still, I had a lot of rebuilding to do physically. Like I had to go back to, to cardiac rehab and all that and get strength back in my heart before I could do what I did, because I did very labor intensive work. Um, so I'm sitting there alone and my whole world is spiraling. I got all these bills piling up. I'm unsure of my medical future. I don't have a job. There's no income. That was the start of the depression, because that's the world, coming in on me and like, oh, you're a piece of shit. You're worthless. You're not doing anything. You can't even take care of yourself. That's where all that stemmed from. But then, hindsight being 2020, I actually had, two, comorbidities going at the same time. I had the depression, and then what I now realized is a covert narcissist partner. Um, and again, I'm not here to talk shit, because I understand. Like I used to have this thing. Like it used to irk me when everybody would break up with somebody and say, "Oh, my ex was a narcissist." And I'm like, no, your ex asked you for some accountability, and you just couldn't fess up to it. And I still believe that firmly. Like a lot of people say, my ex is a narcissist, but that's not the case. Like at the time, this is a revelation that I just came to in the last like week or two. And this was an 11-year relationship. At this point, at the heart attack, that was 4 years ago. You know, but the more I sit here and think about it, the more there was telltale signs. Like we can chalk up, the not being concerned over the initial heart attack to, okay, um, you were just as concerned as I was. You didn't want to, face the fact of, hey, this could have been something big. Like, I get it. Like, I can let that slide. But then, I think it was about 3 months after that, she and I were out shopping, and we were in Walmart, and I already don't care for being in Walmart. I don't like the way people act in public when they, especially in Walmart. Like they just, there's no civility, no human decency, you know. It was about 3 months after that heart attack, and her and I were out shopping together in Walmart, and it was, during the pandemic, so of course everybody had to be masked up and, distance. And it was the first time I had a panic attack. And again, it scared the shit out of me. Like I was, 1 minute I'm sitting there standing next to her, shopping, trying to be, helpful and look for things. And then I just, like I couldn't get enough air and I had to have the mask on. And this pounding in my head, like I just wanted to curl up in a ball and just hide somewhere. And it was bad. And I said something to her. I said, hey, look, something is really wrong. Something's not right. And her immediate reaction, and I will never forget this, because that's one of those things that like burned into my heart, was she gave me this cold, dead look and said, I can't believe you're being such a big baby. Fine, let's go. Not an ounce of concern. Not a, hey, okay, I still have to do this, but you go your own way. I understand. None of that. It was just, she got really upset at me for that. And the irony is, a few months after that, she had her first panic attack. This time it was in a grocery store, not Walmart. But when she had hers, my reaction was, hey, I know what you're going through. You go out to the car and I will finish what needs to be done. And I did it. And again, that was another telltale sign that I, one of them red flags that I ignored. And after a while, when it started to like really sink in, like the depression got really bad and I didn't know what to do. And I was trying to figure out, what moves to make, like what changes could I make? I mean, that's what really started this whole journey, is what changes I can't do what I used to do. So what changes can I make to improve my life, to be better, to make this work, to still show up? And I'm sitting there in a heap trying to put myself together, and I'm begging her, like, I need encouragement. I need help. I need, I'm in this hole. And, looking back, it's not right to have that expectation. It's not. But on the flip side of that, if somebody claims to be your partner, then they should be with you. They should work with you. Even if they have their own reservations, they should still communicate with you. And she did not do that. When I say it was a month, there went a month where I did not see her because I was in such a state. At that time, I was still able to drive. I just, like legally, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't trust myself. Things were bad. And I told her, I need you. Like I said the words repeatedly, I need you. And for a month, I would get phone calls, but that was it. She wouldn't come to see me. She wouldn't. And finally, after a month, I gave her an out. I said, look, this isn't working. I've been telling you I need you. You're not showing up. I'm in bad enough shape. This is making me worse. I think it's, I've got a lot to work on me right now. Let's just call it done. And that was her out. And of course, she argued that. And, a little later when we had a talk, she goes, I'm sorry, I let people get in my ear. You're so down. You're not taking care of yourself. You're not doing anything. And I have to be careful, which she has kids that are hers, not mine. But, and that's something else. That's something I overlooked. Like, that was her panic when we first got together, is I don't want you to, get comfortable with me and then all of a sudden decide these kids are an issue. Like that was one of her things that she was very anxious about. I said, look, I'm here. And it's funny because later she would pit me and the kids against each other because she would come to me and complain about things that the kids were doing. And say, I want this to be different. I want things, I don't know what to do with them. And again, I'm your partner and you're coming to me with a problem. So I'm going to, step in. And admittedly, I did not have the experience. I was not a father. I, had very little idea what I was doing. But I did have a couple good role models in my life, you know, that I could go off of. So I did the best I could. And again, I don't claim to be perfect, but, I kind of, it was a rough combination of what I was used to, of how I was disciplined as a kid compared to, the mistakes I saw that were made with me that I didn't want to make. And again, I don't claim to be perfect, but she would consistently, come to me and say, hey, tag, you're in, I need your help. And then when I would stand up and do my part, she would shrink back. And if they balked, she was on their side, you know. And after a while, I finally learned, and I would start to ask, when she would come to me complaining, like, hey, are you coming to me just to vent, or are you coming because you want me to do something? And that kind of took the power back in that dynamic. And hey, you're not priming me and setting me off. Like, that ain't right, you know. Um, if you want me to step in and do this right, then we have to do this the right way. If you are coming to me and asking me to step in, then you need to back me up, when I do step in. And that never happened. Um, so I gave her this out, and she didn't take it, and she said, it'll get better, and for a little while it did. But, I told her afterwards, like, hey, I know I'm a mess right now, but I'm trying to get better. And what doesn't help is the fact that if you are going to let everybody else get in your ear when I am supposed to be your partner, that's not going to work for me. Um, we're supposed to do this together, in sickness and in health, good times and bad. Granted, we weren't married yet, which wasn't my choice, by the way. Um, you know, it's just not, I can't do it. And I told her, don't, what I need you to do for me right now is don't make me feel useless like the rest of the world does. Don't make me, an afterthought in your life. And that was all I ever asked. And, looking back, I really wish I had ended it there, because that never changed, you know. I never got the encouragement. I never got the, as a matter of fact, I started to notice a pattern, and we're coming up on the end of the story about the end of the relationship. In that meantime, I did start to pick up a pattern where every time I did start to like try and crawl my way out of this hole, and I started to, make improvement, would be when she would just conveniently choose to have one of those moments where she would slap me down and have one of those inconsiderate moments. And, you know, it was hard. It really shouldn't have taken me as long as it did, but it did. And a big part of that was, again, my own fault. I mean, I have to take accountability here. At that point, I did start seeing red flags, and I didn't do anything about it because I was so, conditioned. Now I understand. I was conditioned at that point to accept, tolerate, and even expect that kind of treatment. Um, and it irked me. It didn't sit right with me. And that was part of the war with myself. So it fed into the depression. Um, you know, and it wasn't good. And like I said, this happened multiple times. When I say, that talk, and this is here's some solid advice, I can give you in any relation, not just romantic, but in friendships all. If they hurt you once, it was a mistake. If they hurt you twice, it was an informed choice. Like they knew they'd hurt you the first time. They might not have understood the severity. It's up to you. Anytime after that second, third time, it's a pattern. And she had done this cycle to me, like noticeably, like where it really deeply hurt me 4 times. It was the fourth time that was the charm that finally made me break free. But this last time, she had come to me a few months ago and said, "Hey, I have this opportunity. One of my friends, a coworker, is going on a cruise, and they've invited me to join them, and I would really like to go and have this experience." And of course, it hurt, because one, we have been very open with each other about our past relationships, and the person that I had dated before her had cheated on me on a cruise. It's the same premise, like, hey, I'm just going out. It's going to be a girls' thing, and I had to deal with that after. And at that point, I accepted it. I've learned better now. No. I myself have had opportunities to step out since I've started this healing journey. And no, because I have the self-control and the faculties. At the time, I thought what I had was a good thing, and I didn't want to mess it up. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself because I know I'm like feeding into the image that they're trying to portray. And again, that's that program, that conditioning. And I don't want to put her friend on blast, but her friend had been going through some genuine stuff, like real, like heartbreaking, earth-shattering stuff, like serious stuff. Like her friend was in a bad place. And I took 2 issues with this, because one, mind you, at this point, this was the 4th time that there had been an incident where I said, hey, I need you, and you didn't show up for me, but now you want to go show up for somebody else. And that's okay. I'm supposed to accept that. Okay. And then secondly on that is, ever since I started this healing journey, like I've unlocked a lot of my discernment, my intuition is on point. Like my pattern recognition, like it is scary at sometimes. People that have spent any amount of time around me, and that would be her, like she was a witness to this. I would hear some offhand story about people that I knew or see something on TV, and I would make a comment like, hey, I bet you this is how it ends up. And within a couple months, sure as shit, even if I wasn't dead on, I was close enough to say, hey, how did you know as much as you did? And again, it's that intuitiveness I was talking about in my last video, it sucks how I came about that intuitiveness, but I wouldn't change it for the world because it's great. I love that superpower. It makes me a great friend because I can tell when people are like me that hide when something is wrong. I can usually snip that out, or when people are being deceptive with me. And again, this is that coming into play because, when we had this discussion, when she told me about this opportunity, I looked at her and I said, listen, I said, one, it hurts me that you want to go do something without me. I said, but I can deal with that, but here's my other issue is your friend is not in a good place. And I know they need your help, but you are going to share a cabin and they are not in a place where they're making, or should even be expected to make good decisions right now. And if you're sharing a cabin and they decide to do something foolish, invite someone in or whatever, that puts you in danger. And again, my job as your partner is to think of these things and protect you and look out for your well-being. I will not be there to protect you, so I need you to think of ways to protect yourself. And that was pretty much the end of that conversation. Never, it didn't come up again. And then fast forward about a month, 2 months after that and this was a little over a month ago now, this was the big end. On Saturday, She'd come here. We were visiting on Saturday. I went out. I had a friend meet us. People had been getting on me a lot lately about how I wasn't doing a lot, or at least from their viewpoint, that I wasn't doing a lot to get myself better. A lot of friends came to me with a concern like, hey, you're kind of letting yourself sit here and rot, and it's not cool. So I took that as motivation, and I went on a 4-hour hike in the woods. Like, that was big, for me, for my recovery. Like, I was feeling on cloud nine. Like, I did it. Like, I hiked. I mean, granted, I had to stop and sit a few times, but I kept myself, going at that capacity. And it really showed me just how good I was doing on this healing journey, not just mentally, but physically. Like, I am able to do more than I'm giving myself credit for. And so I'm on cloud nine. And the very next morning, because usually on Sundays, she has to get back to the real world, leaving time to get herself ready for the workday. So as she's getting ready to pack up and leave, she looks at me and she goes, oh, that cruise, I decided I'm going to do it because I need to do it for me. That is exactly how that conversation went. No acknowledgement to what I had said before. Not, hey, I think you're being insecure about this and I don't think it's right. There wasn't even that. It was just a complete disregard that I had even said anything. And that was the snap. That was the moment that she messed up. She pushed it too far, because that made me realize the deception. Because if you cared about me, you would at least acknowledge, even if you disagreed with what I said, you would at least acknowledge what I'd said. You would have come out and called me. If you genuinely thought that what I was spouting was bullshit, you would have called me out on my bullshit. You would have said. You wouldn't have just glossed it over. And that was in that moment, the fact that we had the greatest day, like one of the best days of our, like the day before, and now this is in my lap, that I woke up. No matter what I do, you are never going to be satisfied. You are never going to be happy. You're constantly, this whole time that I've been a heap on the floor trying to rebuild myself, you've been distracting me, needed my validation for your insecurity. And I offered it. I didn't complain about it. I sucked it up and I did what I had to do. But she couldn't do the same in return. And I was upset, but I let her go, just like normal. Oh, I'm sorry. I got to back up because I fast forward. That minute that she noticed, like she felt that change in me, her immediate thing after that is, oh, well, by the way, right after that is a 3-day weekend, which is actually ironically this weekend right now. And we can get together and do the thing that you've been wanting to do. After I do this, we'll do that together. Something that I had been trying to bond together with her for months, just an outside hobby I have. Nothing dark, but not something I like to talk about in case certain people watch my videos. Again, not illegal, just not shady, just not shit people need to know. Anyway, because again, I am who I say I am. The right people ask me, I'll be upfront about it, but it's not one of those. That's actually one of the reasons I put one of the warnings at the beginning, and I ended up being able to skirt around. Well, I didn't skirt around. I just jumped right over it. There was another telltale sign in there that not even worth mentioning, honestly, at this point. I think the big points were raised. Anywho, and that was that, afterthought. Like, okay, I'm going to go do what I want to do with the people I want to do it with, and then you can have the leftovers. At that, I had never at any point thought infidelity. That never, cheating, that never entered my mind until that moment. Like there was that past insecurity, and I do recognize that is insecurity, but here's the thing, people, when you're arguing with your partner, when you say, oh, well, you're just being insecure, that's not the card that you think it is when you deal it, because your job as a partner is to make them feel secure in that insecurity. If you are a true partner, you will come together with them and work it out in a way that everybody feels better about the situation. When you are selfish, that's when you thought, oh, you're just being insecure, I don't need to deal with this, and walk away. That's selfishness. Just a heads up for people. Anyway, so, I realized even if I got myself back together and made money, made real money, like, I did, it wouldn't matter. I would never have the respect. She had seen me broken. She had walked all over me. She tap danced over my boundaries. I was never going to have her respect again. And if I don't have your respect, I don't want you in my life, period. So, we finished up that conversation. I was annoyed, but I didn't blow up. I didn't. I let her go like normal, and I waited. Because again, I know about myself. I know my anger. I know sometimes I can be rash. I waited 24 hours. I waited till the next morning. And I sent her a long text, and I pointed out everything I just put here. Like, hey, this is how I feel. And I waited, and there was no answer. And again, I understand. You give yourself that time. I can't expect from her, what I didn't do with myself. I gave myself 24 hours to think about it and make sure I was acting rationally rather than emotionally. And it took her closer to 36 hours to get back to me. And it was short. And it was basically, I'm sorry you feel this way. And that was when I broke it off. That's when I told her, I said, you know what? Anything here you want that you left behind, let me know. I'll get it together. And she said, I don't want anything. I said, okay, no contact. And I broke that the other night. I did, because again, as I discovered about covert narcissists, I did send her a message like, hey, I would have helped you. Please get help. But that's it. That's the only contact since then. And that will be the only contact. Because I'm serious. I have to stand in my guns, or stick to my guns. I'm sorry. And that trust was completely broken. And it wasn't me that broke it. And I'm tired of being the one to fix things in this relationship that I'm not breaking. So, yeah, it's over. And now that I understand what was done to me in that time period, what I really went through, my research into this, it can take me up to 2 years to heal from the damage to my nervous system from what I just went through. Like, that's wild, on top of what I was already going through. But again, I know myself. This is what I do. I heal. I get through it. No matter how bad it got. I spent 4 years hating myself. I wanted to, get out of the game. Every day I woke up and I didn't do it. I'm still here. I'm a lot friggin' stronger than I give myself credit for. So my plans for moving forward are, I've come to the realization that romantic interest is not for me at this point in life. I'm not giving up on it completely, but I don't want to do to my next potential partner what my last partner did to me. So I'm going to take the time to heal and to get over that experience and, all the little ticks and things that made this what it is. So I can be ready for the next one. And in the meantime, I am a man on a mission. Like now, that was one of the other things that she kind of like swayed me away from was my faith. Like she didn't come out and say, no, you can't go to church, but it was always the argument like, hey, Sundays are our time. They're our family time. So, and where she didn't want to go to church, we didn't go. So, but again, as soon as I broke free, the first thing I did was go, and then I was healed. Like that's where I belong. That's who I am. a part of me. And now that I've broken free, I can be me again. So I'm going to enjoy, I need people to understand. I was describing, the last 4 years were absolute misery. And now that I'm awake, that I realized that I was never going to get the love from her that I put out. And then I took the love that I was trying to give her that she refused to accept and put it on myself. And it wasn't an instant cure. It took me a little over a week for everything to work through. And like I've said before, even now, I'm still understanding the changes that made. I don't think people quite understand. It is not a euphemism when the Bible says, you become a whole new creature. I really am a whole new creature. I think differently. I move differently. I have a lot more confidence. I can move with a lot more intention. So that's my plan for the future is I'm going to stick on this path that I'm doing here. And I'm going to find other ways now that I have more free time. I'm not trying to, affirm somebody who is full of insecurity. I don't have any more insecurity now that I've broken free. Now that I've cut that connection, all that left me. It's almost like everything she felt is what I was feeling, and as soon as I cut that tie, it let it go. That's your bullshit. You hold on to that. I'm not carrying it anymore. You have made it clear I am not the one that you would choose to carry that burden for you, so I'm not going to do it anymore. I got that whole feeling when she was asking about the cruise, like she wanted me to give my blessing so she could go do something. And I'm trying really hard not to throw accusations, but it's really hard not to with the evidence in front of me. The way I feel, the way certain steps were made. I'm not going to come out and say that she did actually physically cheat, but she definitely, she wanted to go try life without me, but she expected me to be sitting there waiting when she came back so she could make the choice of, hey, do I want to, keep sitting here breadcrumbing you and stringing you along? Or do I, want to go look at that grass that's greener on the other side? And, now I know, everybody has this picture of me. They've looked at me for the last 4 years in this heat, this absolute wreck. And that's all she has to do is say, oh, well, he was beating himself up and so upset and he took it out on me. He lashed out his insecurities and, it was horrible and I had to get away because it wasn't safe. I know better and I don't care. And anyone who wants to believe that, you're telling on yourself because, again, that's what you want to believe. Like, that's what you tell me. So, it's not my loss. The people that walk away over this, and it's ironic because I had a female friend, from my childhood that I had backed off because my ex said they were insecure about our friendship. And now that, I dumped the ex, I went to, again, my own accountability. I did this backhanded, offhand way of trying to apologize to them for that instead of being direct, and they slapped my hand away, and I can't blame them for it. I can't. However, I also stand firm on my thing. Like, if you are not gonna, be truthful with me, then I cannot mess with people like that anymore. I'm sorry. I understand for a lot of people, lying to yourself is a coping mechanism that helps you get through day to day. I don't knock you for it. I don't want it around me because I cannot. You become the company you keep, and I cannot be that person anymore. I cannot live in a victim mentality. I cannot. I can't. I want better for myself. I want to move forward. I want to make something out of my life. I want to change the world, and I'm going to do it. There's no doubt, no fear. That's the new me. That's what happens when you wake up and start wanting to do things different. That's the effect it has. So that's my plan for the future. I'm gonna continue doing this. Um, some doors have been closed to me because of other mistakes I've made in the past, but there's still other doors that are open. So I'm gonna start knocking on every one. And I'm going to follow my passion. I'm going to follow my calling. I'm here to use my experiences and my testimony to help others. So I'm going to find a way to use that and support myself and grow and continue to move forward. And I'm going to take some time away from looking for romantic. I have God's approval. I don't need anyone else's. I really don't. I'm really good with that. Like, I just want to help. That's it. Um, and that's what I'm going to do. And then in the future, when the time is right, I'm sure I'll meet the right person. I'm sure. Especially now that I am truly myself for the first time, really, in my life, I can now attract the right person. And as much as I beat myself up for how the other relationship ended, here's the flip side of that coin is when things were good, when we first got together and there was those late night, all night phone calls where we, sat and talked and just about anything and everything, I'm going to get to do that again. I'm going to get to meet somebody, new all over again and go through that bonding phase. And this time it's going to be somebody who appreciates me for who and what I am. And they're going to accept that, and they're going to allow us to work together. And it's going to be great. And I'm not in a hurry because, again, I'm on God's time. I got a job to do, and I've been fumbling the ball for a while. So it's time to get back into my studies and get myself sharpened on point and put myself out in the world again and be there to help people. I can't hide anymore because it's not doing any good. I might not be able to do, like, physically the things that I used to do, but my mind is still sharp, and I can still use it to do some good in this world, and that's my intention. So, to anyone this is going on 40-some minutes, so I'm sure not many, if any, are really going to pay attention to this, except for the people stalking me to see what I'm talking about and doing, and of course that's going to piss them off, so congratulations, you're probably the only one to see this, but if anybody else does take the time, thank you for listening to me rant. And I hope you got to see, in real time, this is how I work things out in my head. This is part of my process. The ending of this was not determined at the beginning. This is why I have to do this process the way I do. So, there you go. You get to witness it, and you get to see my crazy on full display, and I'm sure there are people out there that have a certain, predisposed view of everything I just said, and that's fine. Your opinion is your opinion, and you're welcome to it. But again, I am who I say I am. And I am very comfortable in that fact. So, until the next one, take care of each other, take care of yourself. See you then.